Welcome back, everyone, to the Journeyman Podcast. We're ready to jump into another wild ride for episode 16, so if you're ready, buckle up. And before we get started, hit that like button and subscribe to catch all our future deep dives. Today, we're going right to the heart of the crypto world. You know, a place where fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye, really. We're diving deep into the Hawk Tuah project, a cryptocurrency venture that's really sparked a firestorm of controversy.
Yeah, that's right. This isn't just another token launch, We're talking allegations of a rug pull, whispers of insider trading, and a whole lot of questions about, who knew what and when.
And you know what? The deeper we dig into this, the more tangled the web becomes. We've got a mountain of sources to sift through today. Articles, interviews, even a leaked podcast episode that's adding fuel to the fire. Our mission, to help you understand just how serious this situation really is.
Yeah, and that's where I come in. We're going to untangle the financial complexities, decipher the truth from the noise, and hopefully help you, the listener, avoid similar pitfalls in your own crypto journey.
Exactly. So to get us started, let's set the stage. Hawk Tuah, a crypto project that burst onto the scene with a ton of hype, had Haley Welch, also known as HW Tuah, as its star influencer. On the surface, it seemed like a pretty standard setup. Haley used her massive online presence to attract investors, and in return, she was promised a small fixed payment and a small percentage of the tokens. Sounds pretty typical, right?
Yeah, sounds pretty normal.
But here's where things get interesting.
You see, shortly after the token launched, its value took a nosedive, a scenario that unfortunately happens sometimes in the crypto world. It's often called a rug pull. Imagine you're at a bustling marketplace, stalls packed with exotic goods, merchants promising incredible deals. You invest your hard-earned money only to return the next day and find the entire market vanished, leaving you with nothing but worthless trinkets. That's the essence of a rug pull, and that's what many people believe happened with Hawk Tuah.
So if this was a rug pull, was Haley just an innocent pawn in the game, or was she more involved than she claims? Remember, Haley's team has been very vocal about portraying her as a victim, someone who was misled and had no knowledge of any wrongdoing.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, and to get to the bottom of it, we need to look at the evidence. And one of the most intriguing pieces of the puzzle is a leaked podcast episode featuring FaZe Bank, another big name in the social media world. He had initially agreed to host a podcast where the Hawk Tuah team, including Haley, would address the controversy and clear the air.
Sounds like a smart move, right? Get ahead of the story, control the narrative. Except the podcast was canceled before it ever saw the light of day. Why? Well, according to FaZe Banks, he started noticing some suspicious activity in the market right around the time they recorded the episode. There was a sudden spike in the token's volume, and he received messages suggesting that insider trading might be happening.
Right, and it's important to understand why that's such a big deal. Insider trading, whether it's stocks or crypto, undermines the entire system. It erodes trust and creates an uneven playing field where some people have an unfair advantage. FaZe Banks was deeply concerned about this, and he even stated publicly that preventing market manipulation was a key condition for him doing the podcast.
And then, despite all of this, the episode gets leaked? Talk about adding fuel to the fire. Haley's team claimed it was an accident, a mistake by an editor. But the circumstances surrounding the leak are, let's just say, incredibly suspicious. For one, the leaked version had an advertisement embedded in it. Now, why would an accidentally leaked episode have an ad ready to go? It makes you wonder if the whole accidental leak explanation was just a smokescreen.
Exactly. And remember what FaZe Banks said. I agreed to do our first podcast back and had heavy stipulations of not letting the market get manipulated. I think that's basic. Her team finding a real solution regarding the money she made. These people leaked or insider traded the token. That's pretty damning, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. But the leaked podcast is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. We also need to consider the investigations of CoffeeZilla, an internet sleuth known for exposing scams, particularly in the crypto world. He was invited to be on the FaZe Banks podcast too, but he declined.
And here's why that's significant. CoffeeZilla is incredibly thorough. He digs deep, asks tough questions, and demands evidence. In this case, he refused to participate because the Hawk Tuah team wouldn't answer his key questions or provide documentation, especially the contract with Haley.
So what's the big deal about the contract? Why were they so hesitant to share it?
Imagine you're buying a house. Would you sign on the dotted line without seeing the contract, without understanding the terms and conditions?
Of course not.
The contract is the foundation of any agreement, and in this case, it would have laid out the financial arrangements, the responsibilities of each party involved, and crucially, it would have shed light on Haley's potential earnings.
Right, because remember, Haley's team was pushing the narrative that she was only getting a small fixed fee and a tiny portion of tokens. But without the contract, it's impossible to verify those claims, and that lack of transparency raises a lot of red flags. Why wouldn't they want to clear the air and prove that everything was above board?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it gets even more interesting when you factor in CoffeeZilla's concerns about the project's finances. He was skeptical of the team's claims that they only needed a small portion of the millions they raised to run the project.
It's like saying you're opening a lemonade stand, but you need $1 million to buy lemons. Something doesn't add up.
Exactly. And CoffeeZilla obtained insider texts from Doc Hollywood, another key figure in the project, indicating that the actual cost of running Hawk Tuah was closer to a few $100,000. So where did all that extra money go? That's a question the Hawk Tuah team has yet to answer convincingly.
Okay, so we've got a leaked podcast episode, a missing contract, and a lot of unanswered questions about the project's finances. It's starting to look like Haley's victim narrative might be crumbling. But there's more to this story, right?
You bet there is. And this is where things start to get really complicated because CoffeeZilla's investigation unearthed evidence suggesting that Haley might have been in line for a much bigger payday than she initially let on. We're talking potentially millions of dollars, not just a small fee.
Wait, so Haley wasn't just the face of the project. She was potentially a major beneficiary. If that's true, it throws her entire victim narrative out the window. But didn't her team deny those allegations?
They did, but their denials were, let's just say, less than convincing. They tried to discredit Doc Hollywood, painting him as an unreliable source. But CoffeeZilla pointed out that the incriminating text messages were sent before the project even launched. So it's not like Doc Hollywood was trying to save his own skin after the fact.
That's a good point. It seems like Haley's team was trying to have it both ways, claiming she was a victim while simultaneously acknowledging that she stood to gain a fortune from the project. It's a pretty tangled web, and we're only just beginning to unravel it.
Exactly. And to understand the full scope of this situation, we need to dig deeper into the evidence, examine the discrepancies between the promises made to investors and the reality of the project. And most importantly, we need to analyze the motivations of the key players involved.
So stay with us, folks, because in part 2, we're going to explore those discrepancies and uncover even more shocking details about the Hawk Tuah project. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back. So before we left off, we were discussing how Haley's team attempted to paint her as a victim. But what about those who actually invested in Hawk Tuah based on her promotion?
Right, because ultimately this isn't just about influencers and their reputations. It's about real people who put their hard-earned money into this project, trusting Haley and believing in the promises that were made. And one of the most concerning aspects of this entire situation is the allegation of fake investment lockups.
Yeah, let's break this down a little bit. Investment lockups are common in the crypto world, especially during pre-sales. Essentially, investors are told their tokens will be locked for a certain period, preventing them from selling right away. This is often presented as a way to stabilize the market and build confidence. But in the case of Hawk Tuah, CoffeeZilla discovered that the lockup periods promised in the pitch deck weren't actually implemented in the token agreements.
So they were essentially dangling this promise of stability in front of investors, making them feel like their investments were secure, when in reality there was no such protection in place.
That's what the evidence suggests, yeah. And for investors, this is a huge red flag. It points to a lack of transparency and a potential intention to mislead.
Yeah, it's like a used car salesman promising you a brand new engine, but when you pop the hood, you find a rusty old clunker. You'd feel cheated, right? And in the crypto world, those feelings of betrayal can be amplified because the technology is still relatively new and many investors are still learning the ropes.
That's a great analogy, and this highlights a crucial point about the crypto space. Due diligence is absolutely essential. Don't just take someone's word for it, even if it's a well-known influencer you trust. Do your own research, dig into the project's documentation, understand the risks involved.
Absolutely, knowledge is power, especially in the wild west of crypto. I know a lot of people are wondering, what happens next? Is there any hope for the investors who lost money?
Well, there is a lawsuit underway, which is a positive development. This legal process will hopefully provide more answers, and if wrongdoing is proven, could lead to some form of restitution for the victims.
That's good to hear. It's important that those responsible are held accountable for their actions. But even if justice is served, this entire ordeal has undoubtedly left a stain on the crypto world, eroding trust and making people wary of future investments.
Yeah, it's understandable that people feel disillusioned, especially those who were directly impacted by the alleged rug pull. And it's crucial to remember that this case is not representative of the entire crypto industry. There are countless legitimate projects out there, driven by innovation and a desire to build a better financial future.
Right, it's like any emerging technology. There will always be those who try to exploit it for their own gain. But that shouldn't discourage us from exploring the potential benefits and possibilities that crypto offers.
Exactly. And this is where education and awareness come into play. The more people understand about blockchain technology, how cryptocurrencies work, and the importance of due diligence, the less susceptible they will be to scams and manipulation.
So while this Hawk Tuah situation is certainly a cautionary tale, It can also be a learning opportunity. It's a chance for us to collectively raise awareness about the risks involved in crypto investments and to empower individuals to make informed decisions.
That's a great way to frame it. This case has sparked important conversations about influencer responsibility, the need for greater transparency in the crypto space, and the crucial role of individual due diligence.
It's like a wake-up call, reminding us that we can't just blindly trust what we see online, especially when it comes to our finances.
Exactly. So let's pivot a bit and explore the leaked podcast episode itself. Despite the drama surrounding its release, it did provide some insight into Haley's perspective. What were your impressions?
Well, it was definitely a mixed bag. On the one hand, you had Haley breaking down in tears, apologizing, and claiming she was just as much a victim as the investors. And that resonated with some people who felt sympathy for her.
Right, but it's important to remember the context. The episode was recorded amidst growing accusations and scrutiny. Some people viewed her emotional display as a carefully calculated PR move, an attempt to sway public opinion and deflect blame.
And honestly, it's hard to separate genuine remorse from a strategic performance, especially in the world of social media where image is everything.
It raises the question, how much can we truly know about someone's intentions, based solely on their carefully crafted online persona?
Exactly. And that's why, in cases like this, it's so crucial to look beyond the emotional appeals and focus on the verifiable evidence. Contracts, financial records, internal communications, those are the pieces of the puzzle that can help us separate fact from fiction.
Absolutely. And speaking of evidence, let's talk about CoffeeZilla's role in this investigation. He's become a bit of an internet hero, exposing scams and holding those in power accountable.
He's like a digital detective, tirelessly pursuing the truth and shining a light on shady practices. And what's remarkable is that he was invited to be part of the FaZe Bank's podcast. But he declined. Why? Because he smelled something fishy from the get-go. He wasn't comfortable participating without full transparency and access to the project's documentation.
That speaks volumes about his integrity and his commitment to uncover the truth. Even if it means turning down a high-profile opportunity, he's not afraid to ask tough questions, challenge authority, and dig deep to get to the bottom of things.
It's refreshing to see someone in the online space prioritize truth over clout and personal gain. And in this case, CoffeeZilla's meticulous research, his ability to connect the dots, and his relentless pursuit of answers have been instrumental in exposing the potential wrongdoing within the Hawk Tuah project.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in holding those in power accountable. We can't just sit back and passively consume information. We need to be critical thinkers, ask questions, and demand transparency.
And that brings us to the heart of the matter. What does this all mean for Haley Welch? Was she a victim, a manipulator, or perhaps a bit of both?
It's a complex question that might not have a simple answer. The evidence is multifaceted, and there are still pieces of the puzzle missing. But here's what we can say with certainty. This case has exposed the vulnerabilities of the crypto space, the dangers of blind trust in influencers, and the importance of individual due diligence.
It's a wake-up call for both investors and influencers, a reminder that with great power comes great responsibility. And as we navigate the exciting yet often unpredictable world of cryptocurrency, it's crucial that we equip ourselves with knowledge, critical thinking skills, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
That's a great takeaway. Now, before we wrap things up, let's take a moment to acknowledge the human element of this story.
Right? Because behind the headlines and the financial figures, there are real people who have been impacted by this situation. Investors who may have lost their savings, believers in the project who feel betrayed, and even Haley herself, who, regardless of her level of involvement, is facing immense scrutiny and reputational damage.
It's a reminder that the crypto world, for all its technological advancements and financial promises, is ultimately driven by human choices, actions, and consequences.
So as we continue our exploration of this fascinating and rapidly evolving space, let's approach it with empathy, awareness, and a commitment to ethical conduct.
Well said. Now stay tuned for part 3, where you'll discuss the broader implications of this case and what lessons we can learn as we navigate the future of cryptocurrency.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the Hawk Tuah controversy. We've covered a lot of ground, from the alleged rug pull to the leaked podcast episode and CoffeeZilla's investigations. But before we wrap up, let's zoom out and consider the bigger picture.
You know what's fascinating about this story is that it transcends the world of cryptocurrency. It taps into a much broader conversation about trust, accountability, and the power dynamics of the digital age.
That's a great point. We live in a world where information spreads at lightning speed, and influencers can amass huge followings and exert significant influence over their audience. But what happens when that influence is used to promote a product or investment that turns out to be harmful.
Yeah, this is where the ethical considerations become really important. Influencers have a responsibility to be transparent with their followers, to disclose any potential conflicts of interest, and most importantly, to do their due diligence before promoting anything that could put their audience at risk.
It's like recommending a restaurant to a friend. You wouldn't suggest a place that you knew had a history of food poisoning, right? You have a duty to look out for your friend's well-being.
Exactly, and that same principle applies to influencer marketing, especially when it comes to financial products.
So what can we as consumers of information do to protect ourselves from being misled or manipulated, especially in the online world where things can be so deceptive?
That's a question we should all be asking ourselves, and I think the key takeaway from this Hawk Tuah story is the importance of critical thinking. Don't just blindly accept what you see or hear, even if it comes from a source you trust.
It's like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. Do your own research, ask questions, seek out multiple perspectives, and never be afraid to challenge the status quo.
That's a powerful message, and it's not just about protecting ourselves as individuals. It's about fostering a culture of accountability and transparency in the online world.
Absolutely. We need to hold influencers' platforms and even ourselves to higher standards when it comes to the information we consume and share.
It's a collective effort, and speaking of effort, let's give a shout out to Hawk Tuah for his relentless pursuit of the truth. In this case, he really embodies the spirit of critical thinking and investigative journalism.
Yeah, he's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, to speak truth to power, and to hold those in positions of authority accountable.
Well said. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Hawk Tuah controversy, I'm curious, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
If I could leave you with one thought, it would be this. Be an active participant in your own information journey. Don't be a passive consumer of whatever comes across your feed question challenge, and think critically. That's how we navigate the complexities of the digital age and empower ourselves to make informed decisions.
That's a fantastic takeaway. And remember, folks, this is just one story, one example of the challenges and opportunities that come with this new decentralized world.
The crypto space is still evolving, and as with any emerging technology, there will be bumps along the way, but by embracing critical thinking, demanding transparency, and holding each other accountable, we can create a more ethical and sustainable future for this exciting technology.
I couldn't agree more. This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, and I hope you, the listeners, found it valuable.
We've explored the complexities of the Hawk Tuah controversy, delved into the world of influencer marketing, and discussed the importance of critical thinking in the digital age.
Remember, knowledge is power, so stay curious, stay informed, and stay tuned for more deep dives into intriguing topics right here in the Journeyman Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
See you next time.